Yeah. Hi.
Hi, welcome to Hope Surrogacy's first live Facebook feed. I'm Mary.
I'm Amy. I'm Leanne.
We're the Hope Girls, and we've invited two of our experienced surrogates here, Jehvana and Caitlin. Jehvana is a two-time surrogate having carried for the same family, sibling projects. And Caitlin is an experienced surrogate having carried one baby who she just met at the zoo. Was it last week? And he's already two. How'd that happen?
Yeah.
I don't know. But we're going to have Jehvana and Caitlin answer questions. If you have any, please type them in and we'll get to them if we can. But we're going to start out, and Amy, Leanne, and I are going to be on the back here asking them questions. So let's get to it. Are you ready for the first question?
Yes.
And the first question is, which you're going to love.
Dun, 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 dun.
How the heck did you decide to become a surrogate? Jehvana, you go first.
How I became a surrogate. I didn't even have my third child yet. And one of my good friends from college, she had some fertility struggles and she was needing to have a surrogate. That was guidance from a doctor. It didn't work out to be a surrogate for her. She went a different path. And then I ended up becoming pregnant with my little guy, Bryson. So, things, work out. But when I was pregnant with my son, Bryson, it still was just lingering in my head that that's something I wanted to do. And so, yeah, I brought it up to my husband about doing that. And he thought I was nuts. He said, "You're pregnant with our child. So why are you thinking about being pregnant again already?" Yeah.
I love it.
I reached out to you ladies when I was pregnant and just to get some more information, and you all said, "Well, get you through this one." And reached back out. And once Bryson was born, I think it was like 2 weeks later, I was knocking at your guys' door asking for more information, because it was just something that was like a burning desire in my heart that I really wanted to do. At least find out more information about, which then when I did find out more information, it was something that I wanted, yeah. So that's how I had that burning desire, and I know as we all talk about it, is the brain baby of doing the surrogacy.
And Caitlin, what possessed you?
My former coworker was going through fertility issues, and I just thought, why don't I have her baby? But it's obviously way more intricate than it is. And I thought about it to myself for a couple of weeks.
and told Derek.
Then I was like, I gotta get this out and tell you what I want to do, so it can actually come to fruition. But I want to be a surrogate. And he was like, okay, what does that entail? And let's back up a little bit. But
I remember you guys coming to our office, and it was like a comedy show with him.
Yeah.
He was so funny. He had so many great questions. And we always love it when the husband pipes in with questions, because they're not getting pregnant.
yeah.
But I love that they're concerned about your health and safety, and as they should be.
Yes.
So,
And that was his number one concern. But
Yeah, same with Cole. That was, his first response was no, like, you're nuts. But his ultimate concern was if anything were to happen to me physically. His big worry was, what if whoever we're matched with, they just want their baby safe but aren't concerned about my well-being.
right.
And
Who are these people
Yeah.
that you work with?
and so I know he wanted to be really supportive of me. Once I have my vision on something, he knows I'm very
There's no
determined.
turning back.
And yeah, so he's like, well, I want to support you, and so
But I love that after your first journey was over with Phoebe, that he came around and wrote that beautiful letter, or
yeah,
I don't know if it's a letter or experience about what it's like from a husband's perspective.
Yeah.
To do that. And I think a lot of husbands are pretty amazed by their wives. And I love, like, Caitlin, you were at the zoo last week with your family and your surrogate family. It's just really cool. All of you, Derek, the kids, you. Did you think when you were doing this that you would have the depth of that kind of relationship with your parents?
For me,
When you first started.
when you first started, it's kind of, for me, I felt like I was going in a little bit blind because I've never done it before.
Right.
So you don't know what to expect. So
Sure.
I'm envisioning this, beautiful relationship, but you never know what to expect as you go through the journey.
Right. I always say it's like a very intimate thing that you're embarking on with strangers.
It
It's
is.
really weird.
But
Very
it's
intimate.
amazing because of how much trust you put in each other. And you ladies do an amazing job with matching that it made it so fluid and so easy with Brent and Charlie, my intended parents, that I can't imagine life without them and their little family now and their family, like their parents and their siblings. I'm still very close with them. I go, they live in Minnesota. I'll go up and visit them if I'm out visiting other family or around.
Coming in July.
I know, I'm excited. So I'm like, oh, Swayze hasn't messaged me yet, but
he just told me
he
like
probably has.
half an hour.
I know, I'm like, I probably have a missed message now from him. Yeah, so it's, but to me, it's one of those added bonuses of going through the journey is that you get another family. Like,
it's true. Yeah. I think beyond like your husband's, when you go to the next level, you're talking about community, your own children. How did you tell your children about this and what was their reaction? And not only that, outside of that, like your parents and all of that. Like,
we actually sat our kids down at the table and discussed that we wanted to have a baby for somebody who needed that. Lauren was on board right away. But she was 5, So what does she understand? But they really do. They really do. And then Gibson, he was only 2-ish, so but it was normal. It was normal for them. We embarked on it and they embraced it the entire way.
And they got to meet the parents pretty early on into the process, which I always think is really cool because your kids get connected to those parents and they can see the relationship. It's not about so much about the baby. So, I mean, it is about the baby, obviously, but the connection and relationship you have with the parents more, which, I mean, begs the question. I mean, you fast forward through all the things and then you get to delivery and people always ask, how can you give up the baby? Like,
it's not yours.
I know. We'll repeat that many times throughout this.
But we often hear surrogates say, and maybe you can address this too, that it's not your baby. And I mean, maybe you, Jehvana, I can't remember if it was you or someone else who had the baby, looked at like, nope, not mine. Okay. Definitely not my baby. So what was that like? I mean, how do you control for hormones and delivery, and what's it like after,
For me, I feel going into
Order
the
the BLT.
journey. Always order the BLT before the cafeteria closes. Going into the journey, you're just mentally prepared. I know part of the process you go through with being a surrogate is you have conversations with the psychologist, and you can talk through things that if you have anything that potentially you think could be a barrier or anything like that. So talking with the psychologist helped talk through those more biological things that will happen in your body where it naturally, you're going to instinctually, you'll be like, I have a baby to take care of, just with all the hormones going through. But your logical side of the brain and your brain of how you were prepared going in is, that's not my baby. So when people, that's a big question a lot of people ask right away, especially little moms when all they know is their children's, their pregnancies, their labors, their deliveries with their children. It's hard for them to understand the difference between that labor, delivery, pregnancy process versus a surrogacy one. And really, you can't explain it beyond until you experience it, but it's a very different feeling. And
it's so true.
You have care for the baby you're carrying, but it's not on the same level as your own children. Definitely.
I like to call it an auntie-love. It's not the motherly love that I have for my biological children, my children, but it's definitely an auntie love that I would do anything for Phoebe and Casper.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Can you talk about how the matching process worked for you? Because a lot of people wonder, well, how do I have any control over who I'm going to be matched with, and how can I trust this agency to like match me? Like, what say do I have? You know?
I would like to say that you guys know me better than I know myself. I thought going into it, I was like, oh, get matched with an international couple, be flying around the world and have connections, but little did I know the road was going to be bumpy, and it was a saving grace that you guys matched me with somebody local or close, because I wouldn't have been able to get through that without them being here. So
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, who knew?
right,
We did.
yes,
Yeah.
you really did.
And so, yeah, and just for added detail, going in to be a surrogate with Hope, you fill out a questionnaire kind of saying, what are my wants out of a journey, out of intended parents? Would you rather be with a couple, an individual, a heterosexual couple, a homosexual couple? So they go through all of these details of even, would you be okay with having 2 embryos transferred? Yeah, my OB definitely said no for me. but yeah, they go through all these different details and options, and they do their best to align what you expect out of the journey with intended parents that have come to Hope as well. It's not a random generator that just goes and it goes.
Or a book.
I know, and I'm sure sometimes you guys are probably like, oh, that'd be easier, but it's actually really cool seeing because I know they have a board and that
Infamous board.
yeah, the infamous, the secret board that I've only heard about it, but they always write it down, and I'm just always picturing the strategy of like a sports game in between half times with like,
These numbers.
there's a lot that goes into it that is more than like I can't speak to it. I know you guys can speak a lot to it.
But I like how you say your priorities, and
Yeah.
then I love how you say, Caitlin, we do you better
You
than
did. You really are so get down and personal, and you know.
Well, and it's not just you; it's also your partners.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like what were Derek and Cole thinking? Like you guys, I will be pregnant, and they're going, okay, hold on.
Yeah. What?
So we take their priors into consideration too, for sure. Talk about, Caitlin, I heard you just say earlier, bumps. How long did it take? You inquired about the program. It's not just 9 months.
No.
So
I applied in November of 2018, got matched in January, so that was a quick turnaround. And then you go for your medical clearance appointment, which I went to Chicago for that, and right off the bat, that was our first bump. I had a virus that you can get, but you can't. Anyway, so that was our first bump, getting through that. Then after the medical clearance appointment, then what comes next? Oh my gosh.
legal.
Then the legal. So no bumps in the road with that.
Which is good. Which is really good. Yes.
But then you get your meds and start ramping up for that. And then you go to your
monitoring appointments.
monitoring appointments, and my uterus wasn't as thick as it needed to be.
Yeah, fluffy, right?
So then the transfer was called off, and then
Another bump.
then we ramped up to do it again 2 months later to try again, and it was worse. So we had to call it off again, and I just wanted a chance. Wanted a chance.
Right.
So then the intended mom did a lot of research, and she decided to go with, or we decided collectively, to go with natural cycle. So we did that, and it was better, but they had to make the choice. It was the intended parents' choice of whether to transfer or not, because the odds were still way against us. But they decided to go for it, and we ended up going through the transfer, and I had negative home tests, so that was devastating.
Another bump.
Another bump.
Mm-hmm.
But then my blood work came back, and I was pregnant.
Yes, we always
Yeah.
talk about your journey
I
because
know.
everyone thought it didn't work,
Yeah,
but it did.
It
So,
did,
yeah.
and there's many bumps after that throughout the pregnancy, but so it took pretty much 18 months from time of applying
Start to
to
finish.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because, and I like how you had bumps because it isn't always
It's
an easy road unless you're Jehvana.
I
Following that,
Totally
So it
different
is-
stories.
Every journey is different.
It is.
Pretty much. And there's no globe that you can look into to know how it's gonna go.
It's
So
true.
it's,
It's so true.
yeah, like with both my journeys, with Brent and Charlie were the book, by the book, right? I was given the meds, my body reacted exactly how the doctors wanted them. The transfers worked the first time, both times. It's very cookie cutter, but it's not always that way. So every day we were thankful that we had that, because I know how much of a financial investment it is for intended parents coming into surrogacy. So for me, the journey went a little bit more quicker. With having a gay couple as my intended parents, there was extra things involved, just because they were using their sperm. So for being two heterosexual or homosexual males, they had to have more testing on their sperm done than normal, which elongated a little bit, which was fine because my OB wanted me to wait 12 months after delivery of my son. So but in all honesty, it was like probably within a year, because when I met them for the match meeting, it was fall, and then the transfer was early March, right away after that. And so
She came in November.
yep, and Phoebe was born in November, so it was pretty, boom, boom, boom. I know for me, the hardest part, I would say, of course, labor and delivery. I mean, but to me, I feel like that's like. Labor and delivery to me, I'm like, I got this. It's a challenge. I can do this. But the administrative work at the upfront of becoming a surrogate was the hardest part for me, because and the administrative part, what I mean by that is trying to get all of your prenatal records of all your pregnancies and your labor and delivery records. So just trying to compile all of those to provide, because the fertility doctors look at all of those when choosing a surrogate, just to look out for the best interest of their clients, which are the intended parents. So just trying to get all that, chasing those down. It's been like, where was I with this pregnancy? What hospital? So that for me was like probably the hardest part for
Baby
me.
steps, Jehvana. Baby
Yes,
steps.
yeah.
I always tell the surrogates, once they get all that paperwork done, the rest they know how to do. So that's why we front load it and get it all done ahead of time.
the fun part.
Yes.
What
I know.
It's so
made
true.
me laugh about your journey, which was a sibling journey, which I think is really cool. You were able to do that, but you were on a timeline. You told the guys, I'm like, all right, I want to be pregnant by this date. And I don't know that they were ready, but you're like, I am. Let's go.
I know. I'm excited. I'm like, I just did this. I know what to do.
That's good.
And they
But-
were funny because then they were like, we're gonna have 3 or 4 kids, and they had 2. We're like, we're done.
Oh my gosh, that was hilarious. Yeah, and so with Cat, I actually thought they were gonna wait a little bit in between Phoebe and Casper. So when they presented with me, asked if I would carry again, like pretty, within that next, year, I was just like, I'm like, my body's not back in shape yet, so you got me at a good time. I'm like, sure, let's do it. And then, yeah, definitely once, Casper came in, because, as you add more, because, if they originally were like, oh, we might have 3 or 4, and they're like, I think we're good.
One thing I hear surrogates say, it's just so funny to me. Let's say, I haven't been a surrogate, but after the baby's born, it's like, oh yeah, see ya, I'm going. I mean, like, you're ordering a BLT, you're going to sleep after the
Yeah, that,
Like, just to be the joy of, like, I don't have to take that baby home.
yes, yeah, yes. Once you get through, the labor and delivery part, seeing their faces see their baby and get to hold their baby
And they're in the room with you, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And as a surrogate, you get to make that decision on if you're comfortable with that, if you're not. For me, chose to, I wanted them there. They're the parents. They should experience just like how I did with mine. That's me. I just told them to stay up by my head a little. And I always say they would have been traumatized even more anyways by female parts. So,
That's right.
yeah. But yeah, so they, so seeing their faces, just light up like that to me was the best part. And then after, it's like, here's your baby, and you hand it over, and you take that in, and you're just watching them, this beautiful moment, and you're like, okay, I'm starving. Like, because usually when it's your child, you're like, okay, I have to do this. They're doing this, doing this.
Right.
And,
Yeah.
but now I'm like, hey,
I'm done.
Yep,
Yeah.
my hard part's done. It's done.
Caitlin got caught in the
Yeah.
crossroads of COVID. And you're another
Yeah,
mom,
yeah.
which she got to see her intended parents through the OR window.
Yeah.
Right, but in not your dream. I mean,
Right.
Because even Derek didn't get to go in with you. Did he?
Derek was in the operating
Okay,
room
good.
with me, so I
An
had to have,
unexpected C-section.
yeah, had to have a C-section with placenta previa. So that put a wrench in, but then the whole COVID thing did too. So only,
And it was new COVID, so,
yeah,
so they
only the
didn't-
intended parent, one intended parent could be in the bay waiting for the baby. The other intended parent had to be on, like FaceTime.
Which was terrible. But tell them they didn't know. This is unusual. They didn't know the sex of the baby.
Yes,
didn't
they
want to know.
chose to keep that a surprise.
Yeah.
So
Did you know?
we did not
I know,
know.
okay.
We did not know.
Yeah.
So we had the nurses video there getting to meet the baby together, and so we have those memories. So
Which
we're
is
really fortunate to have
I know.
that.
I know.
The
It's-
nurses were great.
Yes.
We call it the COVID curse.
Yes.
COVID. Yeah. Anyway.
But
That's another example of a journey, like not
The
knowing
journey,
what
you're
journey.
knowing.
Yeah,
Right.
it's very.
I just have to say, just keep trusting in the journey. No
Yeah.
matter how hard it gets, just keep going and keep trust that it will transpire how it's supposed to transpire.
That's good. Yeah, that's really good.
So let's talk a little bit about like what's it like, Caitlin, you talked about this briefly, the med cycle, like getting pregnant. I mean, you guys are both married to husbands, you have sex, you have a baby. What is this? I mean, it's not your genetic material you're using. So do you want to talk about that cycle? You said you had 2 cycles and then you did a natural cycle. So
Yeah, so you get Lupron to shut down your ovaries. That's an injection into your stomach. And then I was taking oral estrogen and
progesterone?
progesterone.
So
Yeah.
those are the big needles.
Yeah. So yeah, the medication part. We had to go through IVF just to get our bodies to where it needs to be to make the perfect environment for an embryo. But of course, we are getting an embryo implanted, so we don't want any of our eggs to release. So we're on certain medications. It's very similar to IVF, but it's not trying to rev up our eggs to then release. It's shushing our eggs and then trying to fluff up our uterus to make a nice big fluffy bed for the embryo to come in. So you're on a lot of different medications that's telling your body to do what it needs to do.
So your fertility clinic will give you a calendar and you lay it all out however you see fit to organize it, but you have to stay regimented on the timeline to what it needs. Otherwise it can be off and then that can result.
And then progesterone, once a positive, or not even before then, you start taking progesterone injections, which are actually, to me, those were the worst ones because the needles are big and it's just such a thick. I mean, it's not terrible.
Ice and heat.
Yeah, ice and heat.
Yeah.
Your bum gets a little bruised after a bit, but it's
Do you
all
still
worth
feel
it.
ever? Some surrogates say they can still feel like a
No,
sore spot.
it was numb for a good while. But yeah, you take the progesterone to trick your body into
Holding on
to
to it.
keep holding on to the embryo until the embryo can have its own placenta, which gives the hormones to say, hey, I'm pregnant. So those went on. My first journey, actually, the doctors had me stay on for 12 weeks. But then with Casper, which was only a year and a half later, a year later, they only had me on for 10, but 2 weeks made a difference to me. So. Yeah, I did a happy
I
dance.
always think it's so when you just stop. Like you
Yeah.
don't wean off,
wean,
but you
right.
just
No,
stop.
you do, and that's the scariest part because you're just conditioned to be like, is this gonna make me lose the baby? And you're terrified because you know,
Right.
as a surrogate, you're so emotionally invested for the family, and you don't want to be a cause for it, but you have that scare of, well, this is keeping the baby there, and if I stop it, am I just gonna bleed? But science is there to help support. Like, so when I stopped, you're sitting there and you're just like,
You have so much more time in the morning.
well, yeah.
That's so
You
true.
don't have to warm it, and yeah.
How did you guys store your meds? Some people
In my
do-
closet.
just in their closet. Like, did you keep it in the box?
Yeah.
Or did you put it in, like, some people use those shoes.
Oh yeah, some people have it
things.
organized. I just kept mine all together.
Yeah.
I thought the Lupron needed to be in the refrigerator.
Mine
I thought.
didn't, I don't think.
I think mine did, and because there was just a little vial. I mean, the Lupron shots are like little bee sting things, so those
Any
aren't bad.
kind of reaction to the drugs?
I didn't. I was fine. Just in the injection site for progesterone, I got a little
Shit.
itchy.
Cold, if there was any reaction.
No, actually, I asked if he would help me with the progesterone injections, and he was deathly afraid he was going to hit a nerve. Yeah, but yeah. So one time I actually kind of freaked him out, and I was like, "Oh, I'm just joking." And he's like, "Oh, I don't know." So then I mean, especially with the second journey I did, I actually gave myself my own progesterone injections. So I just turn around, boop.
Get it done.
I know. And Cole, when he was doing it first, he would go so slow, which was actually worse. It's like, I'm like, just go. I'm like, just go.
Who did yours?
Derek did mine,
Yeah.
and he's deathly afraid of needles, but he just did it because it was
Champ.
something he had to do.
Yeah.
When he would be at the cabin, I would have to do it myself too. So it helps, but sometimes like it would be awkward to try to hang on to it and arrange it and everything, but it's doable no matter which way.
Is it worse than being live on Facebook?
I don't know about that.
So getting pregnant, you go to the fertility clinic. What happens after? Do you get to go to your own doctor, your own hospital? How does that work with the intended parents?
So for any of the fertility treatment going up to all of that, I went to Brent Charlie's doctors. So I went there until I was released after the first trimester, so it was about 12 weeks. Then I was released back to my own OB. Since the pregnancy is occurring in my body from medical insurance reasons, they see it's my body. So my medical insurance covers and oversees that. So to stay in network, I would go to my appointments. Brent and Charlie were always invited to come along. I always kept them up to date on everything going on, ultrasounds. A lot of the times they'd come down for those, or one or the other would come down. And then for delivery, I delivered at the hospital that is in network for me. So the hospitals that I delivered my babies at, which was nice because I was familiar with it. So it helped give Brent and Charlie a little bit of comfort, like, not my first rodeo here, this is what we do, here we go. And so it was nice for me as a surrogate as well, knowing that the medical providers I have, I was familiar with as well.
And Caitlin, for you, the same.
Yeah,
You said you went to Chicago.
went to Chicago, had the transfer, and then I had more monitoring appointments to confirm the pregnancy. And then once we got to 10 weeks, 8 to 10 weeks, then we were released to the OB that we collectively agreed to go with. I wasn't comfortable with my own family doctor because overworked, all that. Anyways, found a doctor that we
That's cool.
liked
awesome.
together.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. And because they were local, they could come to all the appointments.
Yes, correct. And then COVID, we were able to FaceTime those in those instances.
Yeah.
But yes, they were a part of them all.
I think a lot of potential surrogates ask, like, your relationship with your intended parents, and we've talked a little bit about that, but I think about, we hear women say, oh, maybe I don't want to work with a hetero couple because the mom's going to be so upset she can't carry and she might be controlling, or I don't want to work with a gay couple because they have no clue what's going on. So can you talk about that experience? Maybe we'll have you go first, Caitlin, working with a hetero couple and what your experience was like that.
There was really no different. Like she wasn't like that at all. It was a partnership from day one, and we've been in contact.
So she wasn't looking in your window going, "Are you eating organic?"
She was not. They give their preferences of medical things and stuff like that, but there's no control. There's no.
She's trusting you.
Yes, there's a lot of trust.
And I just remember you're more on the quiet side and they're more on the quiet side, so we thought, oh, will be a quick dinner, and you closed the restaurant down. They were talking. I know, we're introverts. We're like, you closed the restaurant down? Like, yeah, we didn't have enough time. Like, who knew? Like, you just never know
It
how.
was a great start.
It was a great start.
Very.
Yeah,
It was
a great story. Yeah. So.
And for you working with a gay couple, like what was it? I mean, because you're in a hetero relationship and you know, there's a clear roles. that you
Yeah.
have, and what's it like with that?
It was amazing working with Brent and Charlie. It was actually, it was nice where they both are like, we don't have uteruses, so we trust a lot of things in your guidance that you say. And they're like, you know, we don't want to tell you what to do with your body, which was nice. And especially being a surrogate, you need to have that good teamwork, communication, because ultimately the journey is happening to my body. So it's my medical choice of what happens. And that's where being matched appropriately is good, because you want to be matched with a couple that wants the same journey. There's a lot of things that could come up that could be hard conversations. You know, to terminate the pregnancy, if there's a medical concern arises. So you want to make sure that you're matched appropriately, because I'm the driver of my body, and I am very open with the intended couple. So I always wanted their best interest because I know it's their baby. So being very open and communicating is really big.
Big thing.
Being able to, you know, we talked about postpartum a little bit, and I honestly don't remember if either of you expressed breast milk or not. I'd say 50% of our surrogates will, 50% won't. So you want to talk about that and how you have that conversation?
Yeah, that's actually one of the discussion points before you're matched, is a detail of if you'd be willing to express milk for the baby, because some intended parents will pay for the milk to be delivered if you don't live close by. For me personally, I actually had a breast reduction before I even had my own kids, and I wasn't able to provide very much milk for my own children. Even if I could have provided milk, to me, it was easier for me to just, when the baby was out, it was easy for me to mentally just say, no, this, you know, I'm done with this. I'm gonna go back to my kids and, you know, still interact and have, you know, pictures with the intended parents, but I won't have that baby connection where it's connect somehow with me being involved with providing milk and feeding. And so for me, it was a mental thing that it would help me, because I wasn't sure how I'd respond. You know, that's the whole psychological thing, right? Where, you know, your natural instinct versus your logical side. So for me, right out the gate, I said, that's not something that I'm going to be able to provide if that's something you're looking for from a surrogate.
And then what kind of thing? And you,
I struggled with producing milk for my own children, so I did not choose to do that.
yeah.
And the nice thing is there's milk banks now, so
Yeah.
if
I actually
parents.
picked up Charlie.
Yep.
Yes.
Brent and Charlie, yes, my intended parents, they used a donated breast milk, which I know I have a couple friends that have donated breast milk, which is awesome. And I was always envious. I'm like, I wish I could have made as much breast milk as you did.
You made a special children.
Yeah.
That's good enough.
That's right. Yeah. You're really human.
I think the other thing that you brought up is like control over your own body, and I love that. And like when you're in labor and delivery, I mean, like Caitlin, you had an extraordinary experience because you've never had a C-section and suddenly you're forced into one. I mean, and that's like, what? Wait a minute. And then the other thing too, for women who are getting vaginal births, like we just had a surrogate deliver last month, and she had her 2 sons naturally, but her wife said, "No, you're getting an epidural," and it just changed the whole experience for her, so much so that she was taking pictures during the delivery.
She wanted them to have the whole
Yeah.
experience and document it.
So I always say, like, you don't have to be a warrior. I mean, Caitlin, you had such a huge setback with the unplanned C-section. But what was your experience like going into it, Jehvana, in terms of a birth plan? Like, you, the best laid plans, right? You know, and yours took another turn.
Yeah.
But you went into it, Jehvana, with a plan, and you did have a vaginal birth with both of those babies. But what, speak to that in terms of what it's like in the hospital with the medical team and 2 guys standing there, and like, who are these people?
Yeah. So going in, just surrogacies, I feel, are becoming more common in hospitals, and they're accommodating a lot more, especially with intended parents, to allow them to have a family care suite when after they deliver, so they can still be more involved. Our journey in labor and delivery, I wanted it very much to encompass what Brent and Charlie envisioned as well. That's why I definitely wanted them there if they wanted to be there. Even their parents coming in before it got really hot and heavy, I wanted them in there so they saw me getting kind of poked around and in my gown. So it all went pretty much as planned for us in the room. I know something that did stick out to me in the labor and delivery room as a surrogate is a lot of times the terminology was used for me as being the mom. So I was talked to as being, oh, the mom this, and I would kindly remind them that I'm not the mom. Yes, I'm birthing this child, but those are her dads are right there with Casper. His dads are right there. So I always wanted to remind, just kind of get that kind of, to condition the mindset that it's not always going to be, you know, a typical labor and delivery, you know, and depending on certain intended parents, that could be hurtful depending on how it's saying, like with some maybe heterosexual couples in there, when it's definitely, you know, it is a mom when a surrogate, and hearing those words. So I just know for me, that was something that I noticed, and I tried my best to keep reminding, so they felt like they were the parents in the room, and I was just their assistant, even though I was.
You know, you have shift changes and all this other stuff, so you always have to be your best advocate, you know, because you don't know who's coming in. There's an 8-hour shift, and then it's a new group, so we always try to encourage surrogates to speak up, you know. So I think that's good. One question I wanted to ask you, I mean, this is always an awkward one, and but people say we all know you're compensated. What are you compensated for? Like, what things, you have a base compensation, but what are other things that you get compensated for?
Yep, that's kind of so the compensation piece is a loaded question. I get that a lot, and I'm sure you get that a lot. The compensation goes into breaking down with basically a base. So let's start with the base, right?
Yeah.
So the thing that I really liked about Hope is that was the last thing on my mind. I didn't come in to be a surrogate for money. I didn't come in for physical rewards. That was the last thing. So that actually was.
You want a car?
You get a car, and you get a car.
But having to write down on paper like what that value was to me, you can't put a price on that. That's so challenging. But when you sit there and you think about your body, what the risks on your body, family time, and time away from work, you know, that all kind of goes into that compensation piece. And the beauty of it, again, is putting the value on what that value is to me, because it's not the same as Caitlin or another surrogate. You know, you can do research depending on states. There's some agencies that are that say, well, here's the base, and if the more surrogacies you do, you get more compensated. So that's what I thought. I like the beauty of why I liked working with Hope, because I was able to put that value on myself. You didn't tell me what my body meant to me from that value standpoint. And you also gave support documents of here's some like ranges, here are these things. You gave guidance on that, because going into that, you're just like, I
don't want to get paid, so
I know. It's like, yeah.
But there's other things that people, like you brought it up, wages. You don't get paid maternity leave from your employer, so that's an additional compensation. Yeah.
So any lost wages from doctor appointments, going to doctor appointments, because going to an appointment for the surrogacy, that wouldn't be something I would be doing if I wasn't doing the surrogacy. So that's part of the compensation. Lost time for recovery for labor and delivery. I've been lucky at my employers that I've worked with that I got a pretty decent maternity leave with short-term disability.
That's huge.
So, my intended parents didn't have to pay out as much as one would if the employer didn't cover for short-term disability. I was thankful that my employer covered for that, because there could be some employers that, could not agree. But I think we're going in a good direction with surrogacy and infertility and supporting families that need that extra support.
How about yours?
Mileage to go,
Oh, yeah.
daycare expense if you're going to appointments,
Maternity clothing.
maternity clothing,
That's important.
for sure.
Yeah, I know, Brent Charlie, because I was like, I still have my maternity clothes, but they're like, well, we want to take you shopping. So I'm like, well, I don't want to put rain on the parade. So if this is this is fun for you. I'm like, I'm all about clothes. So we made a day of it with that. For you. I
want to ask one last question, and your only experience has been working with an agency, but could you imagine doing this independently?
That's where, so when I got the idea to be a surrogate, I was too afraid to Google it, because I thought I was going to go into the black market abyss and
Surrogacy.
so really the stars aligned with us meeting, because she was already in the process and pregnant with Phoebe. Little did I know that, but I thought that was Bryson. I don't know how. But anyways, the stars aligned, and I was like, "You're a surrogate? What? This is something I want to do." And she's like, "Oh, I'm working with Hope," and so I could not imagine doing it without you guys.
Yeah, I've actually had a handful of women reach out to me asking about surrogacy and just my experiences, and then the thing I try to explain is, going through an agency, there's a lot of support there, especially with it being your first journey. You go into it, you don't know what to expect, and the agency is there to help guide you along the way, especially with the legal, those parts, those pieces. The journey, really, in the grand scheme, there's a lot that goes into it, but you need to take it baby steps, and an agency is there to help you to make it not as overwhelming. Definitely having the lawyer piece in there is going to help protect you as a surrogate and intended parents, because if you do Google, you can come across those really fearful stories of what scares people about surrogacy, that haven't been able to have those conversations about surrogacy, of the couples that went around those channels, and that's how they got stuck or more in debt, because they're trying to cut corners and get around certain areas.
And they end up on 2020 or
and they end up on those the really scary shows that so that's having the agency there, you have that support where you won't end up on any of those shows and get you well educated.
Well, thank you guys
Yes.
so much. We should say
Yeah,
goodbye.
well, I have a quick question actually
Oh,
before
yeah.
we finish.
Yeah.
What was your favorite part and what was your least favorite part? Or what was maybe a negative that you didn't expect? I mean, I know you had bumps.
She already
Caitlin.
told us it was the medical records.
Yeah.
Yeah, the medical. Yeah, the least favorite was the that compiling part. My favorite part is all the like mental and emotional bonus package that came with it. So making a new family now. Definitely the ultimate was the labor and delivering the baby, because once they use that, just seeing the intended parent's face where they look at you and they go, that's my baby, and then you're just like, yeah, it's not mine, and then just seeing something and holding something they never thought they could or would get to. So seeing that moment is just the most beautiful thing. Like that's like running across the finish line and just
You did it.
and it's amazing. And then definitely watching them grow and flourish and live their dream life as a family.
Yeah, because Caitlin, you were just talking about how he's talking and
talking.
cool. So how did it work with you since you had the C-section during COVID? When did you get to spend any time with them? I don't remember.
Did.
Okay.
We got to break the rules. So Derek was my one support person, and as soon as he left, then they were able to come in, and I was able to hold them and be with them and everything like that. So we had that bonding time.
Good.
Before I had to stay some extra time in the hospital, and then they were released. But we got to spend as much time as we could. But now we FaceTime often and meet up at parks and the zoo, and so, and it's really special because my daughter's birthday is a day before his birthday.
Oh, wow.
So
it's coming up.
yes,
That's exciting. Wow. Is there anything else that maybe we didn't ask or that sits on your brain when you think about surrogacy? Or we can always come back.
I know, I was
What
like,
we're
I'm sure we
learning
could
is
talk
can always-
surrogacy for hours because there's so many questions and things to talk about. But I know there's just obviously more events that
We'll do
can be
more.
put up. But I do want to say that you ladies always, in my experiences, have been the best. Even though I'm not an active surrogate now, it's like,
You to say that.
and they are not paying for us to say this.
There's no cue cards here.
No, it's coming from like our hearts. I'm not an active surrogate, but you ladies, we still stay in touch and see each other, communicate, and you guys are another offshoot of a family that came from this. The other thing as well is just meeting the other surrogates. It's like a sisterhood. We get a bond and we all talk, and so it's a cool badge being able to wear and then have.
Isn't that the
We're
truth?
proudly.
Yes.
I love that. It's so true.
Yeah.
It is fun. I mean, now that COVID's allowed us to
Be on the road.
be on the road again, finally, after 2 years.
I've missed you guys.
I know. We've missed everybody. We've been ripped off not being able to go to the hospital, none of the court hearings. So
I know. I love that part when you guys come visit in the hospital and check on us.
I know.
Yeah, like Leanne's coming in with Brent Charlie's breast milk for the babies. I got the milk's here. I'm like, oh good, was my cafeteria lunch on its way too? Did you see that?
Great, where's my food?
Whatever.
well, thank you.
We'll give you a big hug.
Yes.
All our participants. I know, it was awesome.
Thank you.
And we're not paying them really.
No, you're not.
We so appreciate you guys coming in live with us today.
Thank you, everybody for watching.
Yes.
Thank you.
And you
And
can
we're
always.
going to see you at our party.
Yes, it's our 5-year anniversary.
Yes.
This weekend.
Happy 5 years to
Happy,
hope.
yeah.
At 50 babies. We got our
50
50th
babies,
baby.
wow.
A lot of
So we'll be
babies.
back for more Q&As and just to
thank you.
keep you up to date on Hope.
Yeah.
So,
Thanks for joining
Thank
us,
you.
everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Reach in there and